Good morning, Morai Rabotai. We are continuing on Mesechet Avodah Zarah. We are on top of Daf Samech Dalid, Amud Bet. Today's Amud is being learned. L'schud Rufa Shel Ma Rachel Simcha Bat Nahid. That should have full recovery. B'ezrat Hashem. We had three amazing questions. Started the second one and almost ended it yesterday. And the Gemara ends really on the very top of Samech Dalid Amud Bet. Tanya Nami Hachi. Ba'ameh Devarim Amurim Sharshu Aval Nishtatfu Asur. The question really was a Ger Tzedek who inherited with his brother who is still a Gentile Oved Avodah Zarah. They both inherited their father, and whether or not the Yid could tell his brother, the Oved Kochavim, says, you take the Avodah Zarah, I'll take equivalent of that in the money from the assets of the father. And the Gemara says, mutar. I said, wait, halachically, technically speaking, that should be asur because of the concept of rotzeh bekiyumo. And we spoke about the fact that by chametz bepesach also we have this concept upcoming now by stores and those who own chain stores of franchises and also nursing homes, that this becomes an issue. Even though that you sell your chametz and technically, halachically speaking, it does not belong to you, but if you need to have it there, if you want to have it there, that becomes an issue of its own and takes a life of its own in the halachic concept of rotzeh bekiyumo. So how is it mutar? And what I said, technically speaking, it is a problem, but this is a specific kula, specific leniency that Chazal gave for the assets of a goy being divided to a son who is a ger tzedek, because we are concerned that if you don't give this leniency, you are blocking people from being able to become ger tzedek. Maybe they will go back to the evil ways of Avodah Zarah, and therefore we allow it, let it pass. Even though the technicality of it would be an issue. And the Gemara says, I'll prove this to you from a Braita. Tanya Nami Hachi. We learned this in Braita as well. Ba'ameh Devarim Amurim. The only time that this will be allowed is sheyarshu, in the case of inheritance. Aval nishtatfu. But if a goy and a yid or a ger tzedek, the two brothers even, right? It's leprosy, and that should have been asur also. That should have been asur, but nevertheless, he still did that. What's with the lo techonim? And says, Hamadia brings this from Shod Bet Sharim. He says it's mutar because when you don't do an action, you're just davening, or you're just, again, the answer to the questions of Elisha, Naaman, and Mordechai. There could have been other answers as well, because you're scoring points with Kiddush Hashem and with other things. Nevertheless, he says that you see, Lot Chorev is not when you're davening, when you're not doing an action, and hence tefillah would be mutar, and he segues from that to Kaddish, saying Kaddish for a goy that was the biological parents of a ger. He says that's also absolutely mutar. He says also you don't have to be parents anyways, even though that we say ger shenitgayer kekatan shenolatami, that parental relationship is not necessarily there, but nevertheless, first of all, biologically you have that chiyuv of hakaratov. Secondly, it doesn't have to be. It used to be in time past, people would hire somebody to say Kaddish for them, somebody that cares about them, somebody that likes them, and therefore it says you could do that as well. Now, that being said, we go to the third and final quandary in the Bet Midrash, and Rab Nachman is going to answer this one as well. So second line from top to the Amud, Haduriyatvi bekami ba'alehu. They sat again and they're asking a third question. Fascinating question as well. Ger toshav ma'ushi batel avodat kochavim. How about we spoke about a goy nullifying Avodah Zarah of his friend? That not only they could nullify their own Avodah Zarah, but they could also nullify Yenem's Avodah Zarah, another goy's Avodah. How about a Ger Toshav? What is a Ger Toshav, you ask? Now we're going to have later in a few lines from now, three-way machloket Tanaim, what a Ger Toshav is. Ger Toshav is somebody that does not do Avodah Zarah. That's for sure. The question is it only Avodah Zarah that he doesn't do? Or maybe he keeps all the 7 Noahide laws? And Rambam even gives to that twist that he has to be keeping the 7 Noahide laws based on the fact that it says it in the Torah. So not every person that starts doing that from the conviction of their moral compass is going to be considered necessarily a Ger Toshav. Or maybe like Rabbi Meir that holds that Ger Toshav keeps the whole Torah, he only doesn't eat kosher. Right? So but according to all of them, the very minimum that the Ger Toshav accepts is no Avodah Zarah. He believes in the monotheist belief of one Creator, one God, and he believes in Hashem. So how about him as a goy wanting to nullify somebody's Avodah Zarah? Do you have to actually be a Oved Avodah Zarah? Do you have to be a idol worshipping individual in order to be nullifying an idol? Or can you be a regular monotheist non-Jew and still be mebatel Avodah Zarah, a Ger Toshav? Let's minimize it to that, as the Gemara does, and we'll discuss the details of that in the upcoming lines in the Gemara. But says the Gemara, the palach mebatel, the palach lo mebatel. Do we say you have to be an active idol worshiper in order to be able to nullify it? Because how can you nullify something they don't even believe in? Right? A Jew can't nullify an Avodah Zarah. If you are an Oved Avodah Zarah and say this, garbage, bogus, right? Asher lo yo'ilu, right? It's not going to be helpful. That's going to be a meaningful nullification. But if you're not even Oved Avodah Zarah, maybe you can't be mebatel Avodah Zarah. Or Dilma, or maybe kol debar mineh mebatil. Maybe any person that's considered in the same category as this Gentile, so as long as you're not a Jew, you could still be mebatel Avodah Zarah. Maybe you could. And this guy also, even though that he believes in one God, one Creator, he still is a Gentile. So maybe he could do it. So says the Gemara, Amar lehu, Rab Nachman answers this question. Mistabra de palach mebatil, de lo palach lo mebatil. It is logical to say that only if you actually actively do Avodah Zarah, that's when you could be mebatel Avodah Zarah. If you don't believe in Avodah Zarah, then you can't be mebatel Avodah Zarah. So what says, really? Meitvim, they asked in the Beit Midrash a question. Yisrael shematza avodat kochavim beshuk. If you find a beautiful golden piece of Avodah Zarah in the marketplace, it's worth a lot of money, so you want to take it and you want to melt it and you want to go to jewelry business, right? But there's one problem. If you pick it up, what happens? Now it becomes a Jew's Avodah Zarah, and what's the halacha for that? Asur ba'ara. You cannot nullify it forever, lo olam. You get stuck with the Isur Hara. You have to go take it to Yam HaMelech. So what's the smart Jew do? He calls an Oved Kochavim, right? At shelo bata liyado. If you haven't picked it up yet, Omer le Oved Kochavim, you could take an Oved Kochavim and have him be mebatel it. Mishabata liyado. But from the moment that it comes to your hand, you can no longer do that. If you picked it up, too bad, too late. You can no longer tell the Oved Kochavim to be mebatel. Why? The Braita continues, and this is where we want. What we want from this. Because Chazal said, Oved Kochavim mebatel avodat Kochavim shelo v'shel chavero. A goy, Oved Kochavim, could nullify not just his own Avodah Zarah, but even the Avodah Zarah of his friend. But says the Gemara, but if it's not an Oved Kochavim, ben Ovdah uben Shen Ovdah. Says the Gemara, even if he is not serving the Avodat Kochavim, he still could be mebatel the Avodat Kochavim. So that sounds on the face value to suggest that a goy, even though that he's not an Oved Avodah Zarah, he could still be mebatel his friend's Avodah Zarah. There are 4 cases, right? Me being an Oved Kochavim, nullifying my own Avodah Zarah. Me being an Oved Kochavim, nullifying your Avodah Zarah, that you're also an Oved Kochavim. Me not being an Oved Kochavim, being mebatel your Avodah Zarah, that you're Oved Kochavim, and me being mebatel your Avodah Zarah when you're not Oved Kochavim. All 4, it's mashma from the Braita that in any case you have 2 Gentiles, you could be mebatel Avodah Zarah even if it doesn't belong to you. That's what it seems like, right? Because the Braita says clearly at the end, uben she'en ovdah. Even if you don't serve that Avodah Zarah, it's still mutar for you to nullify it. So hence this Jew could schlep any goy, basically, it seems like, and nullify this golden Avodah Zarah and take it. And from here you see, not like what the Gemara, what Rab Nachman suggested. Rab Nachman suggested what? That you have to be an Oved Avodah Zarah in order to be mebatel the Avodah Zarah. But here you see that it seems like even if you don't serve this Avodah Zarah, you could still be mebatel the Avodah Zarah. So how do you deal with it? Says the Gemara, my ovdah umay she'ena ovdah. Let's understand this Braita. What does it mean, ovdah v'she'en ovdah, if you serve it or if you don't serve the Avodah Zarah? Ilema idi oved kochavim. If you tell me that both of the scenarios is talking about an idol worshipper and oved avodah zarah, hainu shelo v'shel chavero. That means yours and your friends, which is the same exact thing that the Braita said a line before that. Because if you tell me that we're only talking about a person that does avodah zarah, so when you tell me ben ovdah ben sheno ovdah means what? Whether it's your piece of idol or whether it's somebody else's piece of idol. But you already told me that the line before, right? Because what's the lashon of the Braita? The language of the Braita is you take a goy, because a goy could be mebatel shelo v'shel chavero, either his avodah zarah or his friend's avodah zarah, ben ovdah ben lo ovdah. Seems like you're saying a new criteria, a new classification. can't be shelo v'shel chavero. So therefore, says the Gemara, how do you understand the Braita? The Braita says the goy could be mebatel his Avodah Zarah that belongs to him, or his friend's Avodah Zarah that belongs to his friend, ben ovda, ben shelo ovda. Seems like it's suggesting that even if you're not an idol worshiper, you could still, which means you're a non-idol worshipping non-Jew, right? You still could be mebatel. You could still be nullifying the Avodah Zarah. That's what it seems to say clearly. The Gemara says, no. There's a third option. And the third option fits the language even better, says the Gemara. My ovda, my shein ovda. Ilma idi v'idi ovet kochavim. Haynu shelo v'shel chavero. Ela lav ovda ovet kochavim. Uma shein ovda ger toshav. The Gemara says, let's suggest that lo ovda is a ger toshav, which means is a goy who does not serve avodat kochavim, and therefore he would stay against what Rab Nachman said, and he would suggest that if you are not an Oved Kochavim, and meaning you're a goy who does not serve Avodah Zarah, you could still be mebatel an Avodah Zarah. And the Gemara says no. Shemamina ger toshav nami mebatel lo. Says the Gemara no. Leolam ema lecha idi ve'idi Oved Kochavim. We are talking about both cases that the guy is an idol worshipping, an active idol worshipper. When the Braita says, whether it's your Avodah Zarah or your friend's Avodah Zarah, whether you serve it or whether you don't serve it, that last passage, that you serve it or you don't serve it, when he says you don't serve it, doesn't mean you are serving Hashem. No! You're still a certified Avodah Zarah. You just don't serve it. You serve a different God, a different Avodah Zarah. For instance, says the Gemara, this that you said, it seems to be redundant, the Seifa and the Reisha, the beginning and the end of your Avodah Zarah versus his, when you serve it versus when you don't. Says the Gemara, no. In Reisha, in the beginning of the Braita, is talking about the case that you don't discriminate. Both of the people serve both Avodah Zarah of Peor and also Markolis. Right? And you find his Avodah Zarah, you find this other goy's Avodah Zarah, and it's a Peor. And you serve Peor too. You could be mebatel. It's Markolis. You serve Markolis, could be mebatel. Seifa is talking about the case that you discriminate very specifically. You are only a chassid of Peor. And this other guy is a chassid of Markolis. You hate Markolis. And he hates Peor. You're very, exclusive and mutually exclusive, both parties. So when you don't believe in Markolis and you find the Markolis, when you don't believe in Peor and you find Peor, can you be mebatel an Avodah Zarah that you don't serve? It doesn't mean that you are serving Hashem. No. He is a certified Avodah Zarah just like any other Avodah Zarah. He just doesn't believe in this Avodah Zarah. So he found Peor, Baal Peor, but he doesn't believe in Baal Peor. So do we say that he could still be mebatel the Baal Peor because he's an Avodah Zarah after all? Or do we say no, you can't be mebatel Baal Peor because you don't believe in it? You need somebody that believes in it and then denounces the belief, then it's mitbatel. Do we say that or not? That's when the Braita comes and says, whether you serve it or you don't serve it, it's going to be still a good bitul. So even if you are a devout Markolis fan and you found the Baal Peor who you hate, you can still be mebatel Baal Peor. But if you're a ger toshav, the halakha of Rab Nachman was absolutely correct. That if you are a ger toshav who doesn't believe in Avodah Zarah, then you no longer could denounce the Avodah Zarah of other people, be it whatever Avodah Zarah it is. So says the Gemara, Sefa zele peor vezele markolis, and therefore the halakha of Rav Nachman is correct. Now, so the Gemara now goes into discussing what is a ger toshav. And this is very halachically relevant because you have to know who is a ger toshav. I'll give you an example. For instance, there's a halakha in Siman Shin Labetet in Choshen Mishpat of having to pay your workers on time. Right? When you hire somebody, there's a mitzvat aseh and a lav to make sure that they get paid on the same day. Right? When you hire a Jewish worker, it says beyomo titen scharo. Right? Velo tavo alav hashemesh. It's a positive mitzvah and a negative mitzvah. And even if he demands the payment, if he finishes his job, right? You hired a DJ. Comes to your Simcha, Purim, right? He plays, he's done, he packs in and he says, can you please pay me? Can I trouble you with a check? Right? It's a nicer way of saying it. So he demanded payment. And you have money, but you're just tired. I told him, tomorrow. Then you have now transgressed both the mitzvah aseh and the mitzvah lo ta'aseh of paying him on time. And even if he doesn't demand, he says, don't worry about it. You're drunk, you're tired. Tomorrow. If he says that, you still have a mitzvah aseh, positive mitzvah to pay him on time. Right there and then. Now, that, by the way, it sometimes becomes tricky when you go to a barber, right? And it's like by shkia. So you find that some of the learned people, what they do is they prepay. They pay the money before they sit by the chair and say, well, whenever you're done, it should be chal. It will be yours when you're done. When you're done giving the haircut, that moment it should be yours, right? So it gets into diktukim of be'umut tenscharo. But that's not only for a Jew, it's also for a ger toshav, according to some. So if it's for ger toshav, what happens when you have a goy that keeps Shabbat mitzvot ben Noach, right? So the definition of who is a ger toshav becomes extremely important when you're talking about this element. So says the Gemara, Ezeu ger toshav. What is considered ger toshav? Kol shkibel alav bifnei gimel chaverim. Any goy who accepted upon himself in front of 3 chaverim shelo la'avod avodat kochavim, not to serve Avodah Zarah anymore. Divrei Rabbi Meir, Chachamim say, Kol shkibel alav sheva mitzvot shekiblu aleim bnei Noach. Right? Any person that accepted the sheva mitzvot bnei Noach, the 7 Noahide laws. Acharim omrim, usually Acharim is Rabbi Meir, but here is Rabbi Meir in the beginning. So, Acharim omrim, El ilu lo ba'u lechlal ger toshav. These people, they're good people, but they still have not become ger toshav. A person that accepted not to do Avodah Zarah is not a ger toshav. And even if they accepted to do 7 mitzvot of Ben Noach, still not a ger toshav. So what is a ger toshav? Acharim say, אלא איזה הוא גר תושב, זה גר אוכל נבלות שקיבל עליו לקיים כל מצוות האמורות בתורה. This is a גר אוכל נבלות. He accepted all the mitzvot of the Torah aside from the fact of kashrut. It's too hard. Right? Yeah. There is a potential ger tzedek in this town that for years he's been wanting to become a ger tzedek, and it's one of the things that's very hard for him is he's very into cheese. Like different cheeses, fancy cheeses, and this, and as such a big part of his life, it's very hard for him to give up the kashrut restrictions, so to speak, that he's not restricted by. So you have a person that is willing to keep all the Torah, kashrut, ochel nevelot. Still, he wants to eat nevelot, but he is keeping all of the. And that, says Acherim, is a ger toshav ha'amura b'Torah, is keeping all of the Torah chutz mi'isur nevelot. Right? Now, what's the halacha? Mi'achedin eslo yayin ve'mafkidin eslo yayin. If you have a ger toshav, you could leave him with wine at your home, right? But you don't give him wine to keep long term. Right? You could leave him with wine at home because we're not so concerned about him touching, or he's not over the Avodah Zarah. It's not over the. But we don't give him wine to keep, because what happens if he runs out of wine and then replaces his wine, which is at least, it's not a netzach, but it is at least stam yeinam. So he's going to give that and replace your wine with his wine, which is stam yeinam. Then it becomes a problem, which is B'ezrat Hashem something we're going to segue in and start learning in the days to come. Hazak Baruch.